Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander. I am part of Power to Fly's hosting team, and I am incredibly excited to have all of you join us for another fabulous Power to Fly Chat and Learn event. Now, before we dive in and start, kind of get into the meat and potatoes of today's event, I want to go over some quick housekeeping items, especially useful if maybe you haven't joined us for a chat in a while, or maybe this is your first chat event with us, in which case, hi, welcome. We're so happy to meet you. All right, now, biggest thing to know about these events is that they are all about you. They're about our attendees, our community members, and making sure that you all get value out of this event. So we have a couple different ways if you'd like to participate. It's another way to kind of make the most of these chats. So if you'd like to, you are very welcome and encouraged. Feel free to turn your cameras on if you'd like to share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. But no worries if you, feel the need to, if you're worried about I don't look so IG perfect today. That is fine, y'all. We want to meet you where you are. So it does not matter to us if you are in your bathrobe or a three-piece suit. We don't care if you're in a corner office or sitting on your living room couch. We want to meet you where you are. So please feel free to join us. Now, if you have any kind of privacy concerns, don't want to show up on our recording or our live stream, completely understandable. As long as you don't come off mute today, you can still come on video and not show up at all. You can also participate without video options if you'd like. You are always welcome to add questions or comments into the group chat. Give us extra detail or context on a question that you asked, or if you want to dive in deeper on something that Michela is going to talk to us about. So, please feel free, keep that chat thread active. We would love to see your questions there. And just as a highlight, kind of get the chat started. I want to know where y'all are joining us from. So let us know in the chat. I'm always very excited to see how far our global audience spreads. For me, I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio, land traditionally occupied by the Fox and Kickapoo tribes. So if y'all are, if you have any other information about where you are, whose land you're on, all that kind of stuff, please feel free to share with us. Yes, there we go. We got Michigan, Minneapolis, Maryland, DC, Georgia, San Fran, Florida. Oh my goodness, y'all. Ontario, India, Ireland. Oh my gosh. So thank you all so much for letting us know where you're coming from. Oh my God, Brazil. Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. All right, now I did mention that today's session is being recorded. Now what that means for you is you get to relax. You get to kick back. You don't have to take notes. You get to enjoy the conversation that we're about to have. And you don't have to worry if you missed out on a reference or a link or a recommendation, any of that stuff, because you can always go back and review the recording. Now, what's going to happen is everybody that registered for today's session, whether you joined us at all, you jump in and out, you don't show up at all, doesn't matter. Everybody that registered is going to get an email from us about 1 to 2 business days, so probably before the end of the week. It'll have a link to where you can rewatch this recording once it's posted on powertofly.com. Now, let's say that Michela shares something so mind-blowing that you are just have got to share this with a coworker or friend or relative. You don't have to wait 1 to 2 days. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. I'll be sharing links for all of this in the chat with y'all in just a couple minutes here. But you can head over to our YouTube channel. The the recording is usually posted there within about 5 to 15 minutes at the end of the live stream. You can search a huge section of our archive chats on that YouTube channel. And then also, if you wait, or even if you just come back and check it out, our website, we also have our entire archives, everything that's happened from the beginning of Chat and Learns to now. Everything is saved and viewable and free on our website. So we absolutely recommend that if you're liking this programming, check out what else we've done prior, and avail yourself of even more great advice and resources. Now, last but not least, we are on social in a bunch of different places, but something y'all may or may not remember about us is that Power to Fly's mission is, gender parity in the workforce, true representation, inclusion, pay equity. We have all of these goals, and we won't meet them until we have as many people on board as possible. So one of the ways that we are trying to meet these goals is by getting resources like, Michela's awesome expertise, getting these resources out and into the hands of as many people as possible. If you would like to help us with that, we would love to have you. Please feel free to take photos or video as we go, share it out to your social networks, let people know that you are learning and growing with Power to Fly today. We would love to repost, retweet, reshare anything that y'all put out there. Our hashtag is #PowerToFly, and we are at PowerToFly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All right, that's going to bring the end of the Power to Fly stuff, for today so far. But if you have questions on any of this, always drop them in the chat. I'll be right there and ready to help you. All right, now, last but not least, our guest here is here with us today on behalf of Tenable. Now, I'm sharing with you their chat thread, or sorry, their company page URL in the chat thread right now. That's what you're looking at here. So what you can do on this company page, you can learn more about Tenable. You can check out stuff like their company beliefs, their values. You can check out past events that they've partnered on with us. You can watch great videos. There's one that's at the top of the page is strategies for a successful interview. It's a successful job search. So I really recommend that if you are interested in Tenable, or if anything that you hear today makes you, want to learn more, I absolutely recommend you check out this company page. You can search their open roles, apply right from our website. And even if you are not actively seeking, but you kind of want to keep Tenable on your radar, there's a big pink button, top right-hand corner of the company page that says follow. Clicking that does some really great things, but basically what it does is it works like your friend who works at Tenable. It's going to tell the Tenable crew that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out a job application. So super, super helpful if you are actively interested and applying, but don't see anything right there that suits you. So absolutely great option. But it also allows Power to Fly to take some of the weight off of your shoulders. So we will go in and we will let you know of the companies that you follow. We'll keep you updated when they post new roles. So you don't have to keep kind of going back and checking and rechecking job boards. So let us take that lift off of you, take advantage of, of the follow network. You can follow and unfollow companies as many times as you want, as many companies as you'd like. But obviously I recommend that you check out Tenable. Now, our guest today is Michela Stribling. Oh, I just realized I didn't ask you if your name is Stribling or Stribling, so you can tell us when we turn the mic over. But Michela is Tenable's Chief Communications Officer. So Michela has extensive experience in corporate marketing and was instrumental in the company's IPO in July of 2018. Now, as a deft storyteller, Michela has worked for some of the world's most respected brands, including Google, where she was part of their IPO team as well, Hewlett-Packard, and IBM. Now, before she joined Tenable in 2017, Michela developed one of the most successful corporate newsrooms for IBM and also established a groundbreaking partnership with TED. Michela, this is all wildly impressive. I'm so happy to have you grace our stage today. Is there anything else that you think our audience should know about you, or anything else that you'd like to share before we dive into questions?
Well, so first of all, it is a privilege and a pleasure to be here today. And I'm not sure that I've ever been introduced with such incredible passion and enthusiasm as what I just witnessed from you. So thank you.
You are welcome. I mean, we get to talk to some truly amazing people, y'all. Like this, the enthusiasm is real. I get really excited when I get to talk to people who know as much as Michela does. So, all right. Now I'm going to turn, we'll stop our screen share here. There we go. And we will spotlight our speaker for y'all. So we're going to get started with questions, but again, just to reiterate, in case anybody's forgetting or you haven't been on a call with us in a while, just to remember that you all took time out of your day to be here with us for the live stream, for the recording, and we want to make sure that we reward you for that. So if you have questions, if you have, if you've got a follow-up, literally let me know everything you want to know. Send it in the group chat. You can always DM me if you have a question or a comment that you'd like me to raise, but you want to keep yourself anonymous. Doesn't matter the reason. Please feel free to send those questions in. And let us know what you're thinking. How are you, has your lived experience been different than what Michela is talking about? Did you submit a question and you're not sure if we'll get to it? Send it in. If we cover your question, but there's more context or details you'd like to give us, send it in. My whole job is to get y'all the information you want, but I can't do that if I don't know what you want to hear about. So take advantage, absolutely send those questions in and we will keep checking for them. All right, to get us started, let's talk about how we can identify professional goals. I feel like when I started my career 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I had no idea what I wanted my goals to be, mostly because I had no idea what I wanted to do. So let's talk about how we should go about identifying some of our professional goals.
Yeah, so that's a great way to start. I had a boss years ago who said to me, I will never give you anything you don't ask for. Let that sink in for a moment. I had never heard anybody say that out loud before. And some people think that that is a very harsh message to deliver to a team, but it was actually incredibly useful. It was a hugely valuable lesson in advocating for yourself and being clear about your expectations, what you expect back. So in this particular case, with this boss, I took on a very big, very ambitious initiative that I knew was important to my boss and bluntly, really important to the enterprise. It was the kind of thing that other people, a lot of other people in the company had run away from. They declined to take it on because it was super complicated. It involved multiple third parties. And it was just the kind of thing that most people avoid like the plague because, oh, by the way, you get to do it in addition to your day job. But I said to my boss, with her words ringing in my ears, look, if the team and I pull this off, then I want two things from you. Number one, I want to work on more initiatives like this, the big ones, the thorny ones, the ones that are really giving, you and the business a headache. And number two, I want a promotion and a bigger team to take on more and more work like that. And this particular program was a massive and unqualified success. It was one that we continued to invest in for a number of years. It was copied all over the enterprise. It was showcased by the company up to the board and et cetera, et cetera. And what I learned from that experience is that at the end of the day, no matter where you are in your career, each one of us is paid to be a problem solver. And the problem that I solved for the business in that particular instance was an image and a perception issue, the kind of thing that prevented the company from making the shortlists that we wanted to be on at the time. And the second thing that I learned that stays with me to this day is that it is very powerful to approach your career with a spirit of curiosity. Guess what? That whole program could have failed. It could have blown up in our faces. So what? We still would have walked away having learned a lot. So the exercise for all of us is to train ourselves to be just a little more fearless, about the kinds of things that you want to take on. Because if you say no to an opportunity, just like all the people in front of me had said no to that opportunity, someone else is going to say yes. That opportunity doesn't go away. It goes away for you when you say no. And the person who says yes may very well go on to get the recognition that you wanted, the promotion that you wanted, the bigger team, the bigger opportunities and all that. So first thing I would say is do not be shy about asking for what you believe you deserve. You also need a great deal of clarity, right? You need clarity about what you want out of your career. So what are your strengths? What is your superpower? What are the kinds of things that you absolutely do not want to do? Like, I don't want to spend my whole day in spreadsheets. That's really important. I also have a friend who always says to me, be clear about what you want versus what your ego wants. What energizes you? What kinds of environments work for you? And I would also invite each of you to think about the fact that at the end of the day, it is your manager's role to help you get to that next level. The last point that I want to make, I hope stays with you. And that is that it is inaccurate and potentially very painful to think about career growth as purely linear. Sometimes our greatest learnings, our most amazing experiences come from making a lateral move, maybe to a new team or a new industry. And I want to give you an example. So many years ago, I made a lateral move that made a lot of people react with the dog head tilt, like, why is she doing that? That kind of thing. I went from public relations to employee communications at Hewlett-Packard. And I did that because an opportunity opened up. And I was legitimately curious about how my colleagues on the other side of the aisle thought about communicating messages to our employees. And that move opened the door for me to join Google pre-IPO, to join as their employee communications leader, someone who built out the employee comms practice. It was the ride of a lifetime. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I hadn't, been open to a lateral move. So I would say, don't think about your career as a series of going up the ladder on a single track. Think about the totality of things that you can learn and the ways that you can really carve out a role that is thoughtful and exciting and energizing.
I absolutely am loving all of this. From the jump, the idea of like asking for what you need. I am also horrible at this. I don't think I'm the only person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's really easy to think that, okay, they gave you the task, you must already have what you need to get it accomplished or something like that. And so I think that's really, really important. And it really reminds me, of your line about ask it, like, figure out what you need, don't ask for what your ego needs. Like, that's a huge sentence. Like, I could sit with that for another hour. Like, that's a huge thought.
Yeah. This friend of mine, actually, I had two friends who were under consideration for a very big role at a very prominent company that is in the spotlight quite frequently. And one of my friends pulled back and didn't go for it. And I said, why would you do that? It's such a great, amazing opportunity. And she said, my ego wanted it. I did not. I didn't want what it would do to my life. I didn't want what it would do to my family. I didn't want boom, 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 boom. My ego wanted it.
I like that. That's super. I mean, there's a lot of people chiming in the chat thread as well. That is a very powerful sentence. Once my whole outlook on work and my career and whatever I'm going to be doing for the next 60, 80 years, really changed once I stopped thinking about what was going to be not necessarily impressive to people, but like what would I be involved in that like people would not necessarily have like negative follow-up questions, I guess. I don't know. It's like I was really, really thinking so much in terms of like success was what other people then echoed back to me. If other people thought I was successful, then that must be success and that must be what I'm going after.
Right.
So I love this advice. Trisha is also saying this really resonates with them at this time in their career. So yeah, I love all of this. Now, the last part of the question, you touched on it briefly, was about how to confidently share these, these goals with our managers. You touched on this briefly, but could you give us an example of a way you've seen this not be successful, like how not to take this to your manager?
Oh, well, the number one thing is do not surprise your manager. That is the kiss of death. This should be a conversation that you have with your manager. And I've seen it go sideways, mostly when people have not taken a moment to say, Jane, I think that it would be very interesting to explore X. And here are the reasons why. I've been thinking about it, XYZ, whatever. I think that when you work, look, let me approach it this way. If you cannot advocate to your manager that you're ready for something bigger and be very specific about what you're looking for and why, and the ways that you believe you can make an impact and add to the corporation, the enterprise, wherever you're working, then you're not ready for the role. You're not ready for the role because every role requires you to be able to advocate for yourself. So the first lesson is to say, I bring value. I am worthy of this opportunity. But like I said, don't get caught in the trap of thinking that you need to move up. You may move up, But you may also find roles, laterally next to you in a different industry, in a different space, in a different department that send you down a path that you never would have explored for yourself had you not met somebody or had a hallway conversation or been open and curious about new avenues.
Yes. Oh, loving this. All right. So along that same vein, when we are trying to advocate for ourselves,
Yep.
how can we get better at this? A lot of people wrote in variations on this question. Most of them contain some version of the person tends to be a bit reserved,
Sure.
or, especially in the term, in some people are just socialized. We don't talk about things that we want. It's supposed to be about what you're achieving and earning. You don't talk about, the plans for the future.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think people should know about being better at advocating for themselves?
I used to be deeply embarrassed, almost to the degree of feeling ashamed to talk about my ambitions or my aspirations. And I think as women, we're taught as girls, young girls, that it's unseemly. It's not very nice to be talking about your ambition. And I was raised in a household where we simply didn't talk about money. We didn't have much of it by any means, but it was deemed unseemly to talk about money. And that kind of training stays with you for a very long time. And it took me a long time, quite a while, to realize that work is fundamentally a transactional relationship. If you're lucky, and I've been lucky a few times in my career to legitimately walk away with lifelong friendships, and that's fantastic. But at its core, you are paid to do something to the best of your ability, and the organization is going to reward you for doing that work. Now, there's another thing that's always ringing in my mind when I think about helping other women advocate for themselves, and that is this old chestnut that we've all heard a million times. Women raise their hands when they feel they're 100% ready for the next role, and our male counterparts raise their hands when they feel they're roughly 60% ready. That's a huge gap. What does that mean in practical terms? It means that you and I and all the women around us are likely going to have to advocate for ourselves and raise our hands before we feel that we're 100% ready. I had a friend who said to me some time ago, look, if you're thinking about it, you're ready. You have thought about it. You are ready. Go for it. Put another way, if you truly need to be 100% ready for the next role before you raise your hand and say, okay, I'm ready, let's go for it, call on me, coach, then I would say you're actually aiming too low. You should be aiming for 2 jobs up because you can already do the first one. So go for it. You are never going to grow in your career if you're not willing to be a little uncomfortable. And there have been many times that I've been uncomfortable. Look, when I joined this company, I had a very junior employee who worked for me, and she was amazing. She was even more talented than I think she knew at the time. And I would throw stuff at her and say, I need you to do this. I need you to do that. I need you to work on this. I need you to work on that. And she would always say to me, yeah, sure, no problem. I got it. In her annual review, she said to me, you used to scare the daylights out of me when all the things that you would tell me to do, because I didn't know what you were talking about. And I'd go back to my desk and I would Google it. How do you do this? How do you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And then I would just get on with the job of doing it. She never, ever told me that she was uncomfortable with everything that I was giving her to do. And my perception of her was that she was incredibly, incredibly with it and very, very skilled. So that takes me to the next point of advocating for yourself. You got to find your allies. That employee had an ally for life in me and in people like me, because she was willing to help anybody, willing to take on anything. Find allies. It could be your boss. It could be someone sitting in the cubicle next to you. It could be someone in a completely different industry who brings out the best in you. Ask those people for coaching and mentorship, and then be open to it. Be open to their feedback. And it can be pretty brutal at times, right? I also had an employee many, many years ago at a different company who was probably the most skilled person I've ever encountered at the art and the science of an informational interview. And this woman would schedule informational interviews with everybody. I want to go talk to product management. I'm going to go talk to biz dev. I'm going to go talk to these guys over here. I want to see how enablement's doing XYZ. And her theory was that she could do her job better by understanding the way other elements of the corporation worked. And she was right. What she was also doing was opening doors for herself. So with all these informational interviews, people walked away feeling like they had uncovered a gem of a potential future employee. And her career path shows that. She's gone from marketing to, private equity to, any number of other things. And it's all because she's willing to knock on doors and say, hey, Meg, do you have an hour? I want to talk to you about how I might be able to learn a little bit more about podcasting or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. We hear stuff about this, like kind of along these same lines a lot, where, you do have to ask for what you want. People can't help you or help, especially with professional goals. People can't help you get where you're going if they have no idea that you have any goal in mind at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I very much agree. You should be communicating these things. We should be talking about them. And like you started to touch on, if we don't talk about these things, it can really, really affect our career growth. It could affect everything from the trajectory of your career to how big it gets. I can't agree enough with what Michela's saying here. So I'm going to do my best to just give you all the thumbs up and keep us moving on questions, but this is absolutely wonderful. Thank you. Okay. I am also collecting questions if y'all have them, so please feel free to send in. All right. So we had a lot of questions that came in the chat regarding communication skills and especially stuff like, where did this go? Especially imposter syndrome and how that impacts, how that internal thing can kind of impact us externally as well as internally. This person specifically had asked if you had any advice on combating imposter syndrome or not quite feeling like we deserve more. I find it hard to communicate my wants and needs when I'm not sure I deserve them. I struggle with this hard. So I want to know what you would say to this person. What should we do if we are constantly thinking that we don't deserve the things? So then how do you make yourself ask for them?
Such a wonderful and heartbreaking question at the same time. And I think, again, as women, we suffer from a tendency. I mean, I'm painting us with a broad brush, but it is true that perhaps women more than men suffer from the sense of imposter syndrome. And what I would say is you need to start by showing compassion to yourself. Start with that. And sit with it for a moment and think about the fact, everything that you did to get to where you are today. So there's a meditation that I do in the morning where the instructor says, think about all of the millennia of ancestors who had to survive in order for you to be here today. And I think about that during the course of the day because it's powerful to remind ourselves that we have a value and a purpose that we bring to our work. Absolutely, 100%. And I think that if you're not speaking up, then at the end of the day, you are putting up. You are putting up with a job that is less than satisfying. You're putting up with people whom you may perceive as less than capable, but they get all the shots. The issue is this. The answer will always be no if you don't raise your hand. And when it comes to imposter syndrome, I would invite you to think about this. I might be feeling like an imposter in this moment. In many ways, I do. Before getting on the call, I sent a note to Muta and said, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I really hope to do right by the team. And I mean it deeply. You don't know what the person across from you is feeling. don't presume that that person doesn't share your same perspectives about herself, about himself. So I think it's also powerful to say, it's hard for me sometimes to advocate for myself. You know why it's powerful to say that? Because you own it. No one can take that away from you. I learned that from a boss years ago. Own your vulnerability. That actually makes you more powerful.
I like that. I think that's really, oh, that's good. And there were a ton of people. I mean, like, people are absolutely loving your responses to this question. And you're right that imposter syndrome that can kind of keep us quiet or keep us holding back. I don't know about anybody else. I live with bipolar disorder in addition to, just a grab bag of other real fun psychological conditions. And it's one of those things that I still struggle really hard with, but I try and keep reminding myself is that your brain is designed to keep you alive and safe-ish. It's not designed to keep you happy or, make you satisfied. So if you are sitting here thinking like, oh, I'm not doing a good job, they must think I'm terrible, blah, blah, blah. Not that you're not reliable to yourself, but like, who told you that? Was it an outside perspective? Did somebody say something? Or are you thinking internally, they haven't said anything good in a while, so it must be bad? Because that's me. I'm not trying to call anybody else out. That is me. So, I really appreciate the focus and the discussion of the fact that, like, what you're getting externally and internally may not line up. That does not mean that your internal is the stuff that's wrong. So,
to add to that, I have worked for people who maybe communicate in ways that are more difficult for me to understand. And especially when you first get to know somebody, there can be moments when someone will say something and you'll think, wait, what did that mean? Did she just call into question the entire body of work? I mean, do we have to throw it all out and start all over again? Ask the question. I just go there. When you said this is how I perceived it. Is that what you meant? And I do that very deliberately. I do that intentionally, because if the person did mean, I think you're an idiot, and I think you and your team totally screwed this up for the last year, I want to know. If on the other side, let them
be the one to say that.
I'm sorry?
Let them be the one to say that. Don't put words in their mouths.
Precisely. Let them say that. More often than not, it will have been my overthinking, my over analyzing, my obsessing over some comment that the person on the other side forgot about the moment that they said it. But it's important to call it out nevertheless, because it gives the other person parameters and maybe helps them understand the triggers that I bring to a conversation or that someone else might bring to a conversation.
I very much like that. We've got a ton of people chiming in the chat here. Mary is also saying, would you speak to your friend the way your internal critic speaks to you?
Yeah.
This is how I do it, y'all. I pretend that I'm like talking about a friend, because like I treat myself in ways that I would rip someone apart if they treated my friends like that.
Right.
Like, really, like, try and be nice to yourself, y'all. This is, it's rough out in these streets. All right. We all need to be as nice as we can to ourselves. All right. We're getting great questions in. So I'm going to try and keep us moving. We have about a half hour left in the session. So get your questions in. I will absolutely try and get to as many of them as we can. All right. This person had wanted to follow up on the communicating your wants and needs. What should I do if my boss makes me feel like I don't deserve things? I believe that I've given everything to my company, but my male superiors respond to my requests for things as if I deserve nothing. So how would you recommend, like how that communication loop then continues? Because, we might not be able to change people's minds, but how should we be responding to or be proactive, as a result of this?
Yep. So I need to ask all of you if you can hear the saws outside my window, because there are
no, nothing at all.
Okay, good. Excellent.
You got a great mic system. This is great.
Oh my gosh, I tell you, I'm sweating bullets over here with the gutter cleaners right there. I think that it is super important to respond in a professional environment in a very unemotional fashion. And I think that that is particularly important to women. So, did you know that the word hysteria is tied to hysterectomy, which is tied to female anatomy?
Oh, yeah.
And I want you to think about that for a moment, because that is how for generations women have been perceived as very emotional creatures. We have the right to our emotions, absolutely. I would invite you, however, to think about a professional environment and the importance of really being grounded in the way that you communicate, the way that you convey your analysis of what's going on. So I've had bosses in the past who have been very difficult. I think we all have. I've had friends who have been very difficult at various points in their lives. Look, we all deal with this every day. In a professional environment, it's particularly difficult because you believe that you have earned the right to do XYZ. So what I have done in the past, perhaps this will work for you, is to say, here's my analysis of what has gone really well. Here's some things that I'm working on to improve, 1, 2, 3. And I'm thinking that the next step for me is this, and here are the reasons why, and to sort of chart those out. Now, the feedback from a boss may be, listen, I think you're the best thing since sliced bread, but there's no business case for promotion. The business will never require a role at this level, not at the size we are today. That's fair. I worked once at a small PR agent and small advertising agency where I used to tell my mom, someone's going to have to die before I get promoted. There's no room for promotion. So you should be clear about whether there actually is room in your organization. If the option to go up the ladder is not there for you, I really, really invite you to think about moving laterally. It can be tremendously fulfilling. And I'm insisting on this point because I have seen so many people discover new career paths and find tremendous growth opportunities just by shifting to the right a little or to the left a little and going to explore a new patch. The last option is if you really feel that you have made the case, you are a top performing employee, you have given it all you can, you have taken on board the feedback from your boss, and your boss is still blocking you from progressing your career, then I would say it's time to perhaps approach a conversation with either a new employer or to go to HR for some coaching and see what they have to say.
I like this. I'm very much appreciating this advice here. Hold on here, putting some more links in the chat thread for people that were asking for them. All right, we had another question that came in from the chat. This one's probably a quick one for you.
Sure.
Do you have any recommendations for communication coaching programs, professional, paid, unpaid? The one thing this person said was not Toastmasters, please, which makes sense. I think, well, it's the big one, right? It's the one that most people know about. It's got name brand recognition. And it's been the gold standard for a while because it's worked.
Yeah.
What do you recommend here? Are there any that you recommend?
Yeah. I so appreciate the not Toastmasters, please. I get it. 100%. I get it. A former colleague said years ago, guess what? You want to get better at public speaking? You public speak every day. Every time you show up for a meeting, you are publicly speaking. It is the way you present yourself. It's the way you command presence. It's the way that you show up in the room. And to quote Hamilton the musical, if you want to be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens, the room where it happens, you have to show up. So where do I go to learn more and hone my skills? I actually don't go to professional coaching sites per se. I tend to go to 3 sources. I go to TED Talks. I think TED Talks are brilliant. You can agree, you can disagree, but they're brilliant on a couple of levels. Number one, Chris Anderson has described a TED Talk, when it goes well, as a bit of a mini miracle. Because you walk in and you don't know anything about the subject, you walk out and you maybe have an idea that you can take with you that can really change your thinking. That's powerful. But number two, these people on stage are dyed-in-the-wool, incredible experts in their fields. They have spent decades studying Egyptian archaeology or genetic engineering or the history of the German novel. I don't know. And their task is to describe something in 10 minutes. So think about that. You're some guy who has spent his entire life studying the evolution of Chinese military regalia. I actually heard a talk about that. How do you take it down into 10 minutes? That is a master class right there. So watch TED Talks and break them down into their constituent parts to see what you can learn from how you can present your ideas in a very cohesive and engaging fashion. Number two, Adam Grant. I love Adam Grant. He's amazing. So he has videos that you can watch. He writes for the New York Times. He's always out there. He works for, I believe, the Wharton School of Business. And my team knows this. We liberally use his ideas and leverage them in our work. He is fantastic. Work in 60 seconds, check it out. Clock behind him, counting down. He breaks down an issue in 60 seconds or less. Awesome. The last one is an oldie but goodie, Strunk and White, Elements of Style. Read it. It's this big. It's like, it'll take you 20 minutes to read it. Everything from omit needless words, omit words, like get it down to the nut of what you're trying to say. Super, super helpful when you're communicating with people.
Yeah, I like this. I had a teacher in high school that used to say, if you're giving a presentation, cut it down to caveman, like literal, like you want fragments of what you're trying to talk about. So that was, that was excellent. Oh, Catherine is asking if you can repeat the last book you mentioned. It was Elements of Style, right?
Strunk and White, as in E.B. White, as in Charlotte's Web.
You're kidding.
No. Okay. E.B. White. Quick one.
Yeah.
E.B. White, of course.
Humble, some pig. Yeah.
Everyone knows him as some pig, exactly. He also used to write for the New Yorker. So you can get the essays of E.B. White, and they're delightful. They're absolutely wonderful. And you can see how this amazing man really lived by the principles that he lays out in Elements of Style. Again, it's a simple read. It'll take you no time. It will potentially change your writing and your speaking style.
I like that. It really reminds me, there's people chiming in the chat thread here. Jody is saying, to develop public speaking, I was recommended to ask a question at every presentation. Also, if there are people I don't know at the presentation, to introduce myself and the unit or organization before I ask the question. That way people know who I am. That is absolutely dead on advice. One of the things that I talk to people about, especially since like I do public speaking, but like I'm in my office in like effectively my jammies with my dogs. There's nobody here. You know what I mean? Like it feels different.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else watched Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It is my favorite. Like, oh my God, so amazing. But you know, she's a stand-up, right? So she's going on stage, she's going to clubs, she's going and doing that stuff that you generally think of as stand-up practice. But she's also going to like dinner parties and telling like a cute, quick story. So, you know, when you think of it, presentation is literally just storytelling. You're trying to entertain and inform an audience. So think about it in terms of that. If you were trying to like tell practice in small ways, introduce yourself to somebody that you don't know in the lunchroom, or talk to somebody at a party and try and like tell a story or share something with someone. Yeah. These are all like excellent ways to practice that are very low risk, like, and can kind of get you that same adjustment and increase of skills without it feeling like you are, taking your one shot at a presentation and potentially maybe screwing it up. Make it easy on yourself.
Yeah. And by the way, have fun.
Yes. Yeah, this should be fun. Y'all, people like these events when I am kind of goofy. So I don't try and lock it down and make this like really buttoned down, super professional, dry kind of thing. People
Yeah,
want to see what you're excited about. That enthusiasm is contagious,
that's
really.
exactly
It's
right.
wonderful.
That's exactly right. And that's actually why storytelling is so compelling. That's why so many people talk about storytelling in a business context. It it's a really effective way to make a point. People remember stories, people remember analogies. And we live in a really complicated world. So sometimes the best way to make a point is through a story. But here's the other thing. A great story humanizes you as a leader. It humanizes you as an employee, as a person. And in a moment of crisis, sometimes a story can be a really powerful way to instill confidence in people, but also to have a little bit of fun. So I use it. You should all have stories at your disposal. Like you should be able to pull up a story quickety quick. And it doesn't have to be your story. It can be
Oh no.
anyone's story. It can be a movie. It can be something that you remember from a song. I break out in a song in my staff calls all the time because it makes me happy. And I think that if I'm happy and goofy, it makes the team feel like they're in a psychologically safe space, which they are. But,
Yeah.
you know, I I often share a story about the 2008 financial crisis. The 2008 crisis was crazy. I mean, we were in a fight for survival, and I had just joined a little startup that was in the web analytics space at a time when web analytics was a really big deal. And it was a fight between us and our closest competitor for press coverage, for sales, the whole 9 yards. And the CEO, who's a very good friend to this day, was super frustrated. And I had been there like 2 weeks, maybe three, not more than three. I had this aha moment and I walked into his office and said, hey, I have this go big or go home idea. We are duking it out over speeds and feeds with this competitor and nobody cares. Nobody cares. And he said, okay, I'm waiting for the go big or go home idea. And I said, well, okay, hear me out. Our secret weapon is we have the vast majority of the US online retail sector using our analytics and we own that data. So I think we should take that data, aggregate it and anonymize it and make it available to the press as a service and give it to them for free because you know that reporters are going to be writing about the spending habits of the American consumer during a financial crisis. And he said, okay, so I heard the go big idea. What's the go home idea? Well, I said, if the data's wrong, we're going to get called out for it and we're out of business. And he said, the data's solid, go for it. And that idea actually took off. We started creating this mini report for the press. It was really a media darling at a time when very few people were reporting on this kind of thing. And here is the real kicker that I want everybody to walk away with. So the big lesson is this. CEOs don't want to talk about communication for the sake of communication. But when you walk in and you say, I have a big idea that's going to solve your big problem, you've got their attention. You've got them by the throat. And then it's on you to deliver the goods. And I know that everybody on this call can deliver the goods. So go for it.
I like that. Okay. All right. One of the questions that we got, a lot of people, in terms of this communication and trying to start speaking up, wanted to know about how to do things like keep their emotions in check. A lot of people wrote in saying that they know that they can come off as, very direct or aggressive. So they wanted tips on how to improve those communication skills. Let's unpack this. Do you think there's a line that or ways for us to self-evaluate if we need to kind of not dumb down, but like kind of tone back the emotion, or if we are just not advocating for ourselves well?
Yeah, let me reframe that. So this concept that being direct is the same as being aggressive is a false construct, in my opinion. I do not believe that being direct is aggressive. I believe that being direct is to show respect. because the person on the other side deserves to hear the truth. And you deserve to work in an environment where you feel psychologically safe in sharing the truth. That's not aggressive. It's not aggressive at all. The way that I try to make sure that direct feedback is not perceived as aggressive is by stripping out the emotion. It's a process that I call going opossum. So you know how opossums play dead? I do the same thing to regulating my emotional response, especially when the feedback is really tough. And I'll tell you why I do that. Number one, I don't know about you, but if I get super emotional, it's blah, 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 and what comes out of my mouth is not necessarily something that I'm proud of or that I want to defend after the fact. I'm also not a native English speaker. My native language is Italian. So when I'm stressed, when I'm in moments of emotional distress, my language breaks down. And so I will pause for very long periods of time because I'm pulling at words, trying to find the right one, or I talk in these nonsensical sentences. So I really work hard to make sure that I am going opossum and keeping it very, very flat for people. I also think that it's important to write out the key points. If you have really hard feedback to give to somebody, it's important to write it out and let the weight of the words sit with you for a moment. Think about them. Don't necessarily have the conversation the same day you write everything out, or at least bullet the points out that you really want to make. And I will often say things like, I offer this with nothing but respect. I need you to pause and really pay attention to what I'm going to say next. Or I'll say something like, I suspect that the next thing I'm going to say may be a little difficult for you to hear, but I need you to hear me. And then I go through what has happened and I present the data. The other thing I will say is, if the person sitting across from you has an emotional response to what you're saying, and I've been in that shoes when someone has said something to me that I found very hurtful in the moment, give that person the right to pause the conversation and say, hey, you look like you might need a moment. Why don't we stop this conversation? You collect your thoughts and then let's get back on the call when you're ready. Because that way, even in the middle of giving direct feedback, you're reading the person across from you, you're reading the room, and you're giving them the respect that they need to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, just lost my screen. There we go. No, sorry, I'm listening to what you're doing. I'm trying to make sure I'm handling the chat. And so I lost my window, but thank you here.
You're multitasking, baby.
Yeah, something I always recommend against, but anything for you guys, all of you. Jody is also chiming in saying the cultural expectations of the dominant culture group can be very challenging. I think that is very, very common. And I don't know if you run up against this a lot. We have Power to Fly has a lot of people who are not native English speakers, and truly all 99.9% of them speak English better than I do. But it is something that we find sometimes where if it's heightened, or if we're trying to move quickly on something, people the sentence structure might change based on what their mother language is, which I always find kind of amazing, right? It's really I kind of like that peek into people, but I also can understand where it feels very it feels like you're undermining yourself. I cry at a drop of a hat. I'm not that upset. I can be unemotional and logical and reasonable about work stuff, but my brain just thinks it's time to cry. So we're going to keep having this conversation, and that is fine. And we can ignore the fact that I'm sobbing because I can't make myself stop. But this is fine. You can touch on these things and just say hey, please do not think that I cannot focus on this, or that I'm not being rational. I feel very strongly about this, but my argument is still holds water.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think that there's a difference between showing your emotion. Look, my team produced a video very recently that had me bawling. It was so moving and inspiring, and I'd never seen something like this come out of the team before. It literally moved me to tears. I think that's great. And I think it's really important to show people that you are confident enough to shed a tear in the office. There's nothing wrong with that. What I take exception to is the other side of emotion, when people get very loud and bombastic and they're yelling and whatever. I don't tolerate that. I do not tolerate that.
Amazing. Like, it's kind of amazing how often you can see things like, behaviors like that practiced in the workforce. Obviously, this is a vast generalization based on my lived experience, no one else's, but like, I have never seen a female colleague explode the way I've seen male colleagues do it. Male bosses, male supervisors, coworkers, doesn't matter what it is. I have seen far more like emotional behavior from men than I ever have from women in the workforce. And I'm not saying it's good either way, but like these, people, we are putting in the work to try and change these stereotypes. People may or may not follow along with them, but like, we are really putting in the work. And so it needs to be something that we're talking about, whether having that emotion is going to help you or engender that, that rapport with your coworkers, with your teams. I think these are really, really great big questions. All right, we only have 3 minutes left. I am going to go in here and put up our last slide. So thank you all for sending in questions. I'm so sorry we weren't able to get to all of them, but we have recorded all of them. So hopefully y'all will have a chance, if you want, to maybe reach out or follow up and see if you can get more questions answered. So I wanted to share this page with you. This is some questions that we had talked to Michela about prior to today's session about Tenable. What I want to talk about, can you tell us or expand a little bit on the energizing culture at Tenable? What makes it so energizing for you?
Tenable is an amazing company. It is an incredible company where we have certain values that we live by. For example, one Tenable. Our CEO will say things and mean them like that is an issue for the entire company. We are one Tenable. I don't want to hear, I'm not working on it, you're not working on it. This is all of us together solving this problem together. And feeling as though we have a duty to do something that really makes the world a little bit safer for our customers. Now, I'm conscious that there are people out there saying, yeah, blah, 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 you make the world a little bit safer. Guess what? We actually do. We help to secure some of the biggest names out there, and that is a huge, huge charge.
I think that's absolutely wonderful. Your top tips for someone who's interviewing. I'm guessing these are not Tenable specific. But what does it mean when you say go for it?
Are you going to say no to yourself? Why would you put that? Why
we already do sometimes, right? When we tell ourselves no, or we don't go after those things.
Don't do it. You know what? It's like when my kids would come home from school and they'd say, Mom, the calculus teacher said only one person's going to get an A on this test. And I would say, and why can't that be you? They hated that response. I don't care. Go for it. Go for it. Because if you aim low, you're going to hit low.
Isn't that how you know you're giving useful information to your children when they're like, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds dumb. No, I don't like that.
Right.
At least from what I remember from my mom, the
right.
points that I was like, no, where she was absolutely the most right.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to bring us to a close today. But I just want to say, Michela, thank you so much for spending this time with us. It has been absolutely wonderful. People were loving this event. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your expertise. It's been wonderful to learn from you for the last hour.
What a treat. Thank you for your time. I really, really respect it. Thank you.
Thanks. And then a huge thank you to our audience as well. Y'all came amazingly prepared. Great questions. I was loving the activity in the chat. I loved y'all sharing and learning from each other. It was so great to see. I'm so excited for our next upcoming chat sessions. We've got a couple more events happening today, as well as some the rest of the week. So today we are going to talk about how to leverage your military background later in the afternoon. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about thriving in tech if you have a non-traditional background. So we've got some really awesome stuff coming up. I hope that we will see many more of you on upcoming chats. If this was your first event, I hope you enjoyed it. We cannot wait to see y'all again. Have a safe, happy, healthy Tuesday, and we look forward to seeing you on another event later on. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.